First and foremost, listeners, I want to clear the air that this is not a discussion over whether or not UFOs/UAPs or intelligent alien life exists. I think it's safe to say each of our hosts please no contest in the subject of life existing elsewhere, somewhere in this expansive universe, of which very little is actually known according to the most brilliant minds on our planet. This is a discussion regarding the legitimacy of a specific abduction case. After we wrapped our last episode, we decided it could be fun to follow up with an episode discussing the main points of skepticism against the case of Travis Walton's UFO abduction. An abduction case touted as having the most credibility of all. To sum up some of the points of our episode, 7 people witnessed the craft. 6 of them passed polygraph tests eventually. Clear, undeniable signs of distress in the witnesses left behind when reporting the incident to the police. Interview after interview, decade after decade, consistently corroborating unchanged accounts of what happened, including visible trauma in their body language when some of the witnesses retell their accounts. It is ultra compelling and very special in terms of an abduction case. Ultimately, like most of these abduction cases, it's simply a matter of taking the abductee or witnesses at their word. If any, what are the holes in this case that keeps the discussion alive still today? Well, please enjoy as we sift through and discuss the evidence which many skeptics claim prove it was all an elaborate hoax.
There is a medicine story that tells of Crow's fascination with her own shadow. She kept looking at it, pecking at it until her shadow woke up and became alive. Then Crow's shadow ate her. Crow is dead Crow now. Join us as we attempt to look through the wandering crow's eye to find the gateway to the supernatural, to seek to know the unknowable mysteries of creation. Welcome to the Wandering Crow Podcast.
Welcome back, wanderers and murderers, to what I hope will be a juicy episode of The Wandering Crow. I'm Abby.
JT.
I'm a walking corpse.
I'm Cameron.
Walking Corp, what's your name?
I am Mandy.
Nice.
That'll be fun to edit.
We should have just kept it with Walking Corpse.
You still can.
Okay. We already kind of did a little bit of collab before we started recording, and it sounds like we are all chomping at the bit to start this conversation, even delving very deep into the research. Some of us are turned skeptics, and some of us are still like wanting to give the benefit of the doubt and or believers. I don't know. We're going to get into it. First of all, we would like to kind of get back to the listeners for a second and let you know how much we appreciate that you are listening to us, giving us your time of day. We are so thankful for you. It's so awesome to see the stats and see people coming in and returning and to catch on when there's clearly new listeners. And that is so exciting. Secondly, we're all over this abduction stuff and UFO stuff, I think. Am I speaking? Is that safe to say that we're all ready to get back to the scary, occult, like fun stuff?
That's what you mean. I wasn't sure what you meant when you said we're all over it. I didn't know if you meant we are like all over it, like I'm on it.
Lies to a
We're
turd.
really on top of it and we've been doing a lot of research about it, or
I think we are. Both meanings are true.
I'm 100% over it.
I now no longer believe in aliens.
Instead of researching this episode, I planned out the next 3 episodes. So that's how over it I am.
Excellent. Our next episode, just to get you all excited right here and now, is going to be about, what is it, Mandy?
Solstice separate, bleh. You know Jimmy from South Park? That's how I feel. Bleh.
That was good.
Bleh. Solstice celebrations from cultures around the world. I'm very excited to get back into some animism and talk about that kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, man. And I don't want to spend too long talking about this, but you want to know what else I've noticed? I mean, other than talking about like death and the afterlife and, the possibility of astral stuff. Are you raising your hand, sir?
No.
Oh, okay. Am I ignoring you? Okay.
No.
No. All right. People are really into cryptids. Those cryptid episodes, even though they were not that long ago, have a lot more listens than some of even the newer ones. And I'm like, what do I mean to say? Yeah, they've got a lot of traction.
Our cryptids get a lot of juice. Our cryptid episodes, they really do.
Yeah.
People are
So that's
super into
cool.
that. Yeah.
It's because they're everywhere.
It's because cryptids are creepy.
I think it's because it's that human hope, that never-ending optimism and belief that like there's maybe something else
Yeah.
out there.
Still discover something.
People run into stuff. Yeah, I just think that there is just something that undying within us that really wants to believe. Just like you said, there's still something left to discover.
Yeah. So, listeners, we would love more feedback from you in regards to how we're doing. Are we hitting or missing with our subjects? What do you want to hear more of? And speaking of which, social media.
If you like what we do, please like, subscribe, download, comment on, and leave a review. Please give us a 5-star rating. If you have a story and you want to share it, you can reach out to us on a variety of ways. We have our email on the website, which has links to all of our media. We have tons of social media links, all available in the show notes.
And now back to the show.
Okay, and now we're back. This one was very difficult for me to chop up into specific segments. And I think that we should just start off with JT's reports and what did you learn about? What did you find?
Well, we were able to find I don't remember who was able to find it. I think it was Mandy that found the MUFON files.
'Twas I.
Oh, it was you. It was Abby. Sorry.
Abby was all over it.
MUFON, Mutual UFO Network.
And now this document is 346 pages of stuff from this abduction case.
There's some very good stuff in there, one way or the other.
It's so impressive.
Yeah.
And it's from all sources. Keep going, JT. You're great.
I just read one part of it. There's Philip J. Klass, who was a diehard believer this was a hoax. And he called them out on it. One of the big things that he discussed or challenged is the contract that he had. So he did some extensive research into the actual contract that Mike Rogers had to thin the forest. Mike Rogers had 6 months to do this job. And if he would have spent the whole time with every working hour doing the job, he would have been able to do that within 6 months. But he needed to clear or do like 6 point something acres a day. But he was a little slower than that. He was doing it about 4.1 acres a day. And he recognized this, and he had gotten about 80%, 70% of the contract completed, and then asked for an extension. And slowly but surely, he only got to about, there was 300 and some odd acres left, and only got through to about there was 284 left. Don't quote me on the numbers. He really tried to investigate this. He actually had conversations with Mike Rogers about it. He had conversations with the gentleman that handed out the contracts for the government to do these reports. And he found that not only did Mike Rogers have that contract, he had 2 other contracts that he was trying to complete at the same time.
Oh, he's a hustler, baby.
He was running a couple of other crews? What do you mean by that?
He was using his crew to do other contracts at the same time during
Yeah.
the same amount of time.
Oh, that doesn't seem
One-
very smart. But
One of
okay.
which he talked about what it was specifically, and then the other one he never said what it was. He just said he had another contract. He was very determined, especially when talking to the U.S. Forest Service office that hands out these contracts, that he was going to get this done. At the time of the incident, he only had 2 weeks left in his extension to complete this contract. But he still had over 200 acres, and to do that much in 2 weeks, the way he does it, or his style of clearing, never would have gotten those acreages done in time. And then if it snowed in that time, it would have.
When was his contract due? Because I thought it was November 10th was when the contract was due. Like that was the end of the extended deadline.
Let's see.
That was the hard final deadline, November 10th. Because the incident took place on November 5th. And that's what stuck out to me.
Okay. I just thought he had 2 weeks left, but maybe he only had a week left. But the point is that he had so many acres to do in a short amount of time. Maybe it was 2 weeks when he was talking to the gentleman at the Forest Service. He had 2 weeks, and he was telling him that he's going to get it done. He's going to get it done. He's going to get it done. The other thing that he points out that he researched into is how much the contract actually paid per acre. He was being paid like $396, or no, he was being paid $226.40 per acre to do this clearing, which overall, if he would have done it, it would have been, like a $300 or $30,000 that he would have been paid over that 6 months, which would have been enough to, at the time, it would have been enough money to sustain him over the winter and pay his guys. But Klaas went in and actually looked at, okay, what were you paying your employees versus what he actually was being paid. And he was paying his cutters, the guys running the chainsaw, which I think there was 2 or 3 of them that were actual cutters, $6 per hour. And then his pilers, the guys piling up all of the wood into the piles they needed to do, was $3.27 an hour. But with what he was being paid for the contract, that only worked out to be $4.95 per man per day, with a crew of 6, including Rogers. So 7 people total. So Rogers was essentially losing money on this contract. That was one of his big sticking points. Like, ooh, you were losing money and you knew it. But Rogers was determined to get this done, because if he failed on the contract, then it would hurt his reputation and potentially hurt his future of getting further future contracts for forest clearing.
Well, failure to complete the contract was a $2,500 penalty on the end reward. So you would have made even less. But so originally, Mike Rogers wrote the Forest Service on October 20th. So that would have been about 2 weeks. But it was 5 days before the contract's final deadline. They did get an extension that the November 10th was the final deadline. November 5th is when their crewmate went missing.
Oh my gosh. You guys know what? So October 20th is when he wrote to them, and October 20th is when that Betty and whoever Hill special aired.
Betty and Barney Hill.
Did you guys know that?
Mm-hmm.
Nationally on TV. Yep, that was part of my research.
I knew it was a couple weeks before. I didn't know the exact date.
The same day.
So there was one thing I was going to add. One of the things was that Rogers claimed that he was going to be hurting in the winter if he didn't make that money, that he was already having to live on food stamps, or would most definitely need to live on food stamps. And so that was part of his reasoning for saying, I didn't want to lose the job, was it was going
he
to
didn't want to lose that 10% that he would have been paid out.
Yeah.
Or
exactly.
would not have gotten if he lost the job. Now, it turns out that after the remaining portion of that contract was bid out, the bid came back low enough to where they were still able to pay him that 10%. He still got that $3,000.
Wow.
and lived on that during the winter. So, and then he was actually awarded another contract very soon after that anyway.
That's surprising. Wow.
Right.
But it was like, I mean, we don't need to go into the details of forestry or anything, but it was a new way of doing the work to where it would be faster and more efficient.
He was the one who pitched it, right?
Mike Rogers did, yes.
Yeah, he got another forestry job by coming at them with this special pitch that he could be more efficient than ever. They're just like, yeah, I guess we'll give you another try.
I feel like the 70s people were just different then. I don't know, like, yeah, we know the guy. Yeah, all right, let's do it. Like, I don't know. Like, if you knew people, maybe it was okay. I don't know. That is so weird to me.
So, I mean, for class, that was a huge red flag. That was a huge, like, hey, he still had all these acres to do, 238 acres remaining. He had done, in that extension, he had done 115 acres in the 13 weeks prior to that. And he had a short amount of time to do 238, and he was determined to do it. Yet he had an act of God happen. But for Rogers, he was like, an act of God? What? That's dumb. I could have just gone in and said, you know what? I'm not going to get it done, and it's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And just given up the contract. He didn't need to create some elaborate story or hoax to get out of the contract. He just would have defaulted on the contract, period. That's his main excuse for that. You know, Rogers, went on to be a forestry guy for many, 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 many years.
Yeah.
And he actually has another story of when he was up on the Grand Canyon doing the same type of work where he saw another UFO and wrote a book about it.
Oh, yeah. He saw the Phoenix Lights, right?
He
Or is
did.
it even different from that?
No,
He did.
this is different from the Phoenix Lights even.
What?
But the Phoenix Lights, he actually chased it from Prescott all the way down into the valley.
His account of that was enough to make me rethink the Phoenix, like my position on the Phoenix Lights a little bit. So that was actually really interesting to hear about. And the way he phrased it, I'm sorry if I'm in your chili, JT, but
Nope.
the way he phrased it was, I had sworn to myself, because I ran away after what happened to Travis, that if I ever in my lifetime was fortunate or unfortunate enough to have something so spectacularly different like that happen ever again, I was not going to run away. I was going to chase it down, and I was going to face it, and I was going to try to get as much out of it as I possibly could. And so when the Phoenix Lights happened, he was like, holy shit, this is my chance. And so he chased it because he was determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past, which I think is, I don't know, there's something about that that spoke to me a little bit.
Yeah. So back to the skeptic angle, though. So did you have any more to say about that, JT?
No.
Okay.
I thought it was all circumstantial what he looked into, as far as he was grasping. In my opinion, he was grasping at anything he could grasp to debunk this.
Because I'm more on Travis's side than I'm not at this point. That's weird to me, because I swear, and I've been looking and I can't find the damn thing, Travis made the claim that they didn't end up getting paid.
Okay. This is why
I thought he did.
Steve says the same thing. So the reason why they break that contract up like that, they pay them something like, did they say 90-10, or is it like 70% up front and then they get paid like in installments and then the final 10% when it's done? Anyway, they get paid some big chunk in the beginning, and the purpose is to pay the crew, right? And get workers working for you.
Mm-hmm.
But Steve said he never got paid for that job. In his like tell all, as he's revealing later, back in 2021, it seems like he did a lot of interviews, including posting his own written accounts about what all happened. And he talks about how Mike never paid them.
I will say my interpretation of Steve's speaking on that was, his uncles were part of the crew, and they did initially get whatever the contract was, but they were real irritated that they weren't going to get paid any more until whatever the specified time was, and that pissed them off, and they're like, we're out of here.
Oh.
Steve's original statement was that's the reason his uncles left.
Okay.
Later he says they left for a different reason.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So his original statement is they were pissed that they weren't getting paid as quickly as they wanted to get paid, but apparently it was part of the contract, and Steve's mom was like, you're in, go to work, because she was on his case for a long time. Either go
Right.
back to school or go to freaking work.
Get Jesus and get a job, boy.
So she was like, stay. And he's like, why should I stay? They quit. They said they're not getting paid. She's like, no, stay. So maybe he didn't get that initial cut because he wasn't part of the crew in the very beginning. It sounded like he came on after people quit.
Okay, so, and I didn't read more than one account of what he had to say. I read one written account that's included on Charlie Weiser. Is that her name?
I think it's Wiser. It's Wiser.
Anyway,
I'm pretty sure.
So she basically cut and paste like what he wrote in like length on his Facebook page or something. And his account is that he and his uncle started at the same time. They were starting this job and the mom made him go too. And then he says that the reason the uncles quit was because Mike had asked them, Mike was trying to get them to partake in this hoax, which he didn't know anything about, obviously, or at least that's what he maintains all this time later. Also, his account is that he has kind of retracted. He has never said he didn't see a UFO. He seems to kind of always steadfastly believe that what he saw was a UFO, but that he's willing to concede that maybe it wasn't. Maybe he was hoaxed. And so there's this sort of like hesitant wavering from him on like how he wants to see it. And he has gone on record saying, like, honestly, based on what I know about Mike and those other guys, they definitely could have done this, and it definitely would have been in their character. And like, I don't know, is kind of his stance. I don't know. Did I read that wrong?
You might not have. In fact, I might be wrong about the payment thing. I do know for a fact, whether or not, whatever the timing was that Steve started working there, I could be wrong about that part. There are two accounts. There's an account that he was pretty consistent with for a long time, I think up until 2021. And then in 2022, he tells Charlie Weiser it was a hoax. Actually, the real reason my uncles quit was because they wouldn't shut up about the UFOs, and my uncles were sick of it and they didn't want anything to do with it.
Interesting.
But like, it's like, bro, you for like decades have not said that. And you have, there's something about the way, especially the way his Facebook postings started to escalate. Like he was just like more and more angry. And I feel like we're getting out of track, but
no, because I did want to tack on the Steve Pierce story at the end of this, but this fodder, like, you're bringing up points that I'm gonna want to talk about. Steve and the timeline of his story changing, I think, is interesting now that you bring it up.
Okay.
And I definitely am going to want to come back to that during my segment.
Really quick, one other thing that's important to mention. There was a letter to Mr. Kloss from all of the witnesses after he had reported all of his findings and everything, that was a strongly worded letter like, hey, don't call us a bunch of liars. We're not liars. And they created a whole list of things that if he did these certain steps and paid for new lie detector tests, and paid for travel for all of that, they would all come together, retake the tests. But they only gave him like 24 hours to respond.
That's kind of tricky, isn't it?
Almost like they didn't want to.
Well, it is. And
that's kind of sticky.
By the time that Klaus responded, the letter came and it was like he had until like Sunday at a certain time just to send a letter or a response back. But, the post office is closed back then. So he got a little extension of a few hours for Monday at noon to post his response, which he did. But before he even posted that response, Mike Rogers basically came out and made a statement to the to the press that, hey, this guy didn't respond to our request to do this, to basically back up what we've asked him to back up. He's full of crap.
So he receives the letter. You're saying it's a Saturday. He's been
Mhm.
given an amount of time that he can't fulfill. And but he's able to send it like first thing in the morning on Monday, or at least get it postmarked, right?
Yeah, certified letter postmarked by noon on Monday and sent it. But before that happened, Rogers had already created a response to the media that he sent out to the media about that.
I don't like that tactic. That's such
Yeah.
bullshit. JT, that happened to us with regard to an organization that we're a part of in the community.
Mm-hmm.
If you'll recall, somebody wanted something from us, and I was given a phone call 30 minutes before the meeting. It had to be decided, and I was busy. And then I was able to enter the meeting where the request was being discussed, but not to discuss my viewpoints on that. And it was phrased, well, we reached out to Amanda and we haven't heard anything back from her. I was like, you son of a fucking bitch. Pardon my goddamn French. Like, that
Yeah.
is some bullshit. That is some serious. That is so that you can say you talked to that person, but you never actually cared.
Yeah. It's trickery. It's
Yeah.
wordsmithery.
So that
Yep.
you can look like the good guy.
So taking that and running with it, I also read Philip Klass's write-up about the job site and the extensions, the forestry job. More than any of the information, there's not really a gotcha, in my opinion. It's the interactions between him and Mike and the forestry people that raise a lot of red flags for me.
Who and Mike? I'm sorry.
So Mike and Philip Klass.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
They have a phone call or a phone conversation regarding the contract and the information at some point. Or did they have a conversation?
They did. They had a conversation about it and about the contract. And then Philip was going to call.
Yes.
What's the guy's name?
Marchbanks. Something.
Yes, Marchbanks.
The forestry contract manager.
He said, okay, well, I'm going to call Marchbanks tomorrow and talk to him about it. And what's his name? Rogers called Marchbanks before Klass could talk to him.
Well, let me get to him before you can. Oh, God. I better do some,
Gotta lay the groundwork here.
Preemptive damage control.
What's funny is Marchbanks didn't give a crap about any of it.
He didn't really care. I agree. He was like,
I don't care.
The job's going to get done. We're either going to pay people or not.
I don't give a shit.
We have our situation. I'm enforcing. He didn't care at all.
He didn't care at all.
It was the interaction and the way that Mike handles talking. And he recorded, okay, does this sound familiar? He recorded their conversation with Klass, the conversation that they'd had over the phone, and then played bits and pieces of it back to the Marchbanks, the contract enforcer, and left out important information.
Every accusation is always a confession, friends.
Right? So that's going to come back later, everybody. Hold on to that nugget.
In every walk of life, always, all the time.
Oh my God.
An accusation is a confession.
How are you doing over there, Cameron? Are you soaking this up? What do you think about all this drama? Have you heard any of this before? Is it all just sounding like, yeah?
I'm having so much fun right now, you guys. I was not looking forward to this.
It's very shady. Very shady. That's they use those tactics now. It's almost like they learned from these guys.
It's
like, oh, that was good. Let's take notes.
Right? Exactly. Okay. Back to the letter that they write to Philip Klass. Just real quick to wrap up JT's thing and talk about the weird way that they offered, that they call it their challenge, the lie detector challenge.
The challenge, yeah.
Right? And they give all of these terms and conditions, and it sounds like, sounds fine. So he actually calls Mike the day he gets the letter. He gets it on Saturday, and he calls Mike to say, look, man, I totally accept this challenge. in principle, he says, I accept this challenge in principle. I cannot physically reasonably respond to you by your deadline. Please allow me to postmark this Monday before noon. And he kept up his side of the bargain. So after these phone conversations, though, after Mike had allegedly allowed him this extension, Mike immediately that Sunday goes to the press and says, quote, he essentially rejected our challenge, is what Mike ended up saying. But the response that Philip had sent to him, postmarked on that following Monday, it is like so cordial and so kind, and it is so thought out. He says, I basically, yes, I accept all of this. I will. Yeah, I'll pay for those lie detector tests. And, we should set up an escrow account. Like, let's go ahead. Let's make this happen. I'm going to go ahead and also add some amendments to this, some more terms. I want us to have this sort of qualified, like these parameters for the examiner we choose, and we got to make sure that they can do their job, and we're not going to feed them questions, and we're not, what is it? There's certain parameters that a polygraph exam is supposed to follow to be valid in the first place.
Right.
No leading questions.
Yeah.
And
certain amount of time. They basically spend at least an hour re-asking the same questions to make sure they get consistent reads.
And sometimes in slightly different ways to try to provoke a response.
So he responds and he's like, yeah, absolutely, man. But then by then, Mike has already thrown him under the bus and said, nope, he said no. And so to fast forward, JT already said this MUFON case file of the Travis Walton case is 346 pages. Yep, 346 pages. Basically, page like 200 to 300 is just this back and forth that goes on for months over the drama that now ensues because Mike keeps throwing Philip Glass in the mud and saying that he's a liar and didn't accept their challenge and threatening that like we should go to lawyers. And then they continue talking about whether like how to make the lie detector test move forward. And then Mike ultimately, like either Mike or APRO, somebody finally is just like puts an end to it and is like, no, we're not doing it. I'll tell you what, it wasn't Philip Glass. So that's another interesting piece of this whole puzzle is say what you will about Philip Glass. The ufology field at large really dislikes him because he was just basically a career UFO skeptic. It is hypothesized that he was actually a secret agent, a CIA agent whose whole job was to like curb public interest in UFOs. And there is some interesting evidence to support that. Regardless of that, he did some excellent work and he was so thorough and he made sure to make copies of every correspondence, everything he ever wrote, keep recordings, transcripts, and on top of him keeping them and recording them, like CCing them out to like 5 different people all at once on every side of the equation. Skeptics.
Such a good strategy.
And I mean, and so there was just no way for Mike to be able to
say that he was lying. Yeah. I CC people on every work email I send because it's never going to be a he or he said, she said thing. Everybody that I can have as a witness is going to get involved. Right. It's a great strategy. Super smart.
I got the feeling, and it worked on me, that this 100 pages in here, more or less, was all about painting a picture of Mike Rogers' character. And it's not excellent. He's definitely a wordsmith. But let's go ahead and if did you find other things, JT?
No, that was pretty much it.
Thank you.
That was kind of a big one, though.
That was pretty fabulous.
Pretty freaking big. Mandy, tell us about Charlie Weiser.
Oh, that's so funny that you asked me about Charlie Weiser because I wrote in my notes to myself, ? Who is Charlie Weiser? She's, a senior member of an organization called metabunk.org, which I actually was looking at that. There's a lot of senior members. I think maybe it just means that she's been a part of the group for a while. She's got a website she created called $3 Kit. She's a regular poster on Reddit and I think Twitter and probably, well, it's X now, right? And who knows what other social media she's on, but she is maybe this generation's Philip Klaus. I think she'd like that. And she is, I will give her props. She is very thorough. She what's the word? cross-examines like every little teeny tiny piece of information she comes across, and she's able to like put connections together, and she's a really good analyst. I'll give her that. Like, she's able to like read between the lines and ask some really probing questions. And based on all of the information available, I think in the MUFON files, in the books, multiple books that Travis Walton has written, every interview they've ever done, conversations they've had with random podcasters, like she's got so much data from all these conversations from all over the place. And she had regular correspondence with Steve Pierce for like a year and a half or something. She has put together this idea of what she believes actually happened. And the one thing that does bother me a little bit, I am, as you can see on the screen, or can't see on the screen, I am a little triggered by absolutes. It does bother me a little bit, her approach. I would feel probably more comfortable, but obviously she probably doesn't care about me or people like me. It would be better for me if she wrote it in such a way as, what is the most likely scenario? This is what the evidence is pointing to, in my opinion. But what she actually says is, these people are dirty, dirty liars. They made it all up. This is what actually happened. This is the real thing. And she's very firm and absolute and convicted about this is the truth. And honestly, yeah, she's done a lot of groundwork, and she's great. I'm not going to say that she's not, because she is. There are some areas where she's interpreted things a certain way that make me wonder, really though, because I could see that interpreted a different way. Not to say that it entirely makes her wrong, because I think she's made a lot of great points. And there is one thing in particular regarding a character that bothers me a lot. And we'll get to that. But the part that I had to investigate was, how in the world would, if it is a hoax, indeed, as Charlie Weiser and skeptics in the community believe, how in the world could they possibly have a situation in which 7 men are all claiming to have seen the exact same thing and have been able to pass some variation of lie detector tests, and some of whom have gone to their graves, absolutely affirming this is what happened to me? How do you get that situation where 7 people all agree? And for the most part, I mean, we've obviously known now that we've got a couple people who have changed their stories, pretty much keep their stories the same. Well, there's a couple of different ones, and there's one big one, and it's based on Raymond E. Fowler. So in 1976, Raymond E. Fowler, who was he worked at the Woodside Planetarium and Observatory in Massachusetts. He worked for MUFON. He wrote to some other UFOologist this particular theory, and he calls it the 2x5 or the 2-on-5 theory, where he posits that actually 2 of those loggers set up the hoax, and through a variety of different means were able to trick the other 5 into believing that they saw a UFO, when in actuality they didn't. So the 2 that he thinks that are the ones who conducted the hoax are obviously Travis Walton and Mike Rogers. And Charlie herself has sort of built on this, and I don't know if Fowler believed this or not. I didn't get that far, but Charlie has mentioned that there is a belief that there was a third person, some unknown, unnamed, anonymous,
like one of his brothers
accomplice.
or somebody. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they gave it a female name, like Bessie or Betty or something. I don't know. But I didn't get far enough into it to really find out who that person is. Like, I was able to see what their role supposedly was, but I don't know how we arrived at the name Bessie, or if there's significance to it, or if there's a suspicion of who that person is. I did read a few accounts where they felt like the brothers, at least one of the brothers, might have been involved. But the 2x5 theory, part of the reason why it does hold some weight for a lot of skeptics is that day, November 5th, Mike and Travis supposedly both disappeared for hours. So Mike at least initially claimed that he was there working, and he was working the whole time, and he was always there, and he never disappeared anywhere. But then Steve Pierce was very firm in his testimony. No, he did leave. He was gone for at least 3 hours. I don't know where he went or what he was doing. And then finally, after I don't even know how long, Mike finally came back and said, well, actually, yes, I was gone from that particular site, but I was just down the hill or down the mountain or whatever, marking off the work site, because if I didn't mark an exact line of where we were supposed to cut, those guys would have gone all over the place. They weren't paying any kind of attention. So confirmed even from Mike himself that he was gone and out of the sight of the other loggers for a portion of the day. And then Travis himself, it's actually a really funny story, was not working that day. He basically like laid in the truck for several hours, and by some accounts had a nap. By another account, he was just really sick. Like he'd been sick the day before and he wasn't feeling quite right. So he was allowed to like lay in the truck for part of the day.
Hungover.
According to Steve, this is the best. They were men screwing around with each other. And Steve starts his whole story about what happened on November 5th by recounting a romantic interlude he had with an older woman. And he doesn't name the older woman at first, but that's how he starts his story. Well, I was a kid and I met this older woman and she took me to the football field and I had a touchdown. So that's how he starts his story. And later, yeah, so he doesn't really know who she is. Later that day, November 5th, he discovers it's Dana, Mike's sister. And not only is it Mike's sister, but it's Travis Walton's current girlfriend and eventual wife.
Oh.
Yeah. So Steve's talking about this older woman that he, got it on with in the football field or whatever of the local high school, not knowing the connection. And Travis Walton, like, apparently was so upset he had to go lay down in the truck for most of the day, and he found it in the truck most of the day. That's Steve's story. But John Goulet says that he was sick the day before and was still sick that day. So it's like, who?
After being out late with Dana, right? Like, isn't that some version of it? Now, okay, wait. I thought the story was that this is the day that this is the situation in which Alan and Travis get into a fist fight because Alan had some sort of, or what's his name? Alan Davis?
Alan Davis.
Okay. He had some sort of relation with Dana too or something.
Oh, Alan Dallas.
Alan Dallas.
Yeah. Not Davis. Well, Steve says, and there was some like shit talking between all of the guys. Alan and Travis hated each other.
Yeah.
And at one point, Alan was like trying out some karate moves and did a roundhouse kick and almost kicked Travis in the head, and that pissed Travis off. So like that same day, they're all pissed at each other. Yeah. And it sounds like Steve was like, well, I got with Dana, and then like Travis was sick and
and disappeared. Okay.
And disappeared. He was like, fuck you guys, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Like, I have a feeling probably a lot of that happened. It doesn't really sound like very much work got done that day, to be honest. In addition, this is another little nugget that Steve has later admitted to, because Travis has said up and down they did not do drugs while they were doing the logging because chainsaws are dangerous, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think the implication is that they were all handling chainsaws, because Travis has flat out said, no, you can't do drugs when you're logging. Chainsaws are dangerous. But the thing is, they were not all on the chains. Steve wasn't. Steve got high that day. He got stoned. And two other guys, Steve says, got stoned with him. And there was some shoe trick that he said that they did. So Alan Dallas is one of them that got stoned. Steve Pierce got stoned. And he calls him Herman Munster in his recounting of the story, but it's actually Dwayne Smith also got stoned with them that day. So he's saying, we were high. So three of them are already inebriated and may not have complete capacity and may be in a very suggestible state. I never really was able to discover what they were doing. What were they smoking? Was it crack? Was it marijuana? Like, what was it? I don't know. So
I have it in my head that it was weed, but I can't confirm where I learned.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, it would make sense. Maybe they did some kind of like a shoe bong situation. I don't know. Maybe he was a MacGyver weed smoker. But so here we have the 2-on-5 theory requires that two people are involved. So not only are two people missing that day, but 3 of the 7. So 2 are gone. 3 of the remaining 5 got high. And the other 2 are presumably on the chains cutting down trees and stuff. They're like probably the only two who are actually working that day. Kenny and Jean Goulet.
No wonder Mike couldn't get the job done.
Exactly. It makes sense.
Yep.
It's all coming together. So the idea is Mike and Travis disappear to set some things up. And one of the things, and Charlie talks about this, is they worked unusually late that night. Normally they would finish up around 4. That particular night, Mike told them, no, we're staying late. We're working overtime because we're going to get this contract done. So there is some question about that. Skeptics will say, well, it's convenient that they worked late that night, the only night that they worked late, because it's probably hard to see a lit up UFO when the sun is still up. On the other hand, they genuinely were late on the contract. That's not something they made up. And it does make sense that they were feeling the burn and were trying to get some overtime in so they could finish up the stupid contract. So it's like, I don't know that you could point to that necessarily as part of this grand conspiracy, but it fits the conspiracy, unfortunately, for my prejudice. So once everything's set up, Mike and Travis come back to work. Everybody works till 6 o'clock and then they leave. So they're driving along, and there is some more analysis that Charlie did regarding the drive. And I'll get to that a little bit later. But based on the 2x5 theory that Fowler proposed, there was a series of signals that was already like pre-arranged. So it requires that somebody was up high or helping. So Charlie says somebody was in Gentry Tower. Fowler said somebody else was there to help manage the lighting and a blue light. So Mike is driving along slow. They come to the point. Travis has jumped out of the car before they've even stopped the truck. That's part of it. Travis approaches. He ducks down, which is the signal to somebody, get the light ready. And then when he pops back up, somebody else who's looking for the signal shines the light and quote unquote zaps him. And then he is a profound actor, apparently, and throws himself backwards. When that happens, Mike is supposedly looking out for these symbols as well. And he's supposed to wait just long enough for them to see the zap. And then he's booking it right the heck out of there. So people don't have a whole heck of a lot of time to examine the scene and really come to grips with what they've observed. And according to some analysis, I don't know if it's Charlie's herself or if this was something Fowler had proposed, the whole thing, when you really break down the event itself, probably took no more than 30 seconds to like a minute for all of it to calm down. And so if you think about it in those terms, witnesses are notoriously unreliable, especially if they're emotionally charged. Could this have been manufactured that way to make them more unreliable, to make them emotionally charged? And then the other part would have been Mike responding in a very emotionally charged way to get the rest of them very emotional. Have Mike yelling, have Mike screaming, have Mike totally freaking out, driving like a bat out of hell, invoking, if these guys, if they're not already scared out of their minds, more fear. And the more you can cloud them with fear, the more you can suggest to them what it was you all just saw together. I can't believe we just saw this thing. It must have been a UFO. It got Travis, right? So they're already like setting the stage to basically masterfully gaslight the hell out of these other 5 guys. And if you keep in mind that 3 of them are stoned already, that's just easier to do.
3 of them are stoned, and then the other 2 are overworked because they were the only ones working.
Right.
Yeah. One of them's got a brand new baby at home.
Yeah.
Kenny's got a baby at home. So maybe he is sleep deprived already. And he's Mormon, and we know that the Mormon likes to keep their people busy. So, who knows how much sleep he was actually getting. I don't know. Is that too much, JT? I feel like it's true, but we know it's true.
The Mormon comment.
Nah.
I was like,
The Mormon comment. The church is notorious for making sure to keep their members as busy as possible with church-oriented stuff.
Yes.
And it's to keep them connected to the church and to the doctrine,
Engaged.
right? Engaged. And so that they're not socializing too much outside of the church with other non-Mormon folks, right? So So we know that he's a good Mormon boy. He's freshly married. He's got a baby at home, and he's actually one of the only ones actually working. So put it all together, he probably is pretty exhausted. I think that's a good point. So Fowler believed that based on the description that the gentleman had provided, that Mike had drawn, there was actually a really popular little UFO toy that was available on the market. And he actually, in the MUFON files, there is a picture of it. And I personally think it does really resemble, because it's got these striated marks on it.
The ribs.
And yeah, it's ribbed. Thank you. That's a very good descriptor. And although it was not recommended by the manufacturer, you could insert lighting inside of it to make it glow from within. That would cause it to burn and become defective, and you wouldn't be able to use it ever again. But if all you needed it for was 1 minute of scaring the shit out of some people, then that would be all you needed. What I like about the theory in general is it does account for the wobbling that everybody describes seeing. Everybody has an account of seeing this thing move.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the alternate theory, Gentry Tower, obviously that thing never moved. So that's the 2-on-5 theory, and it really relies heavily on the signals, the unspoken signals between the teammates, a third accomplice who's kind of hidden, and Mike really, really digging into these guys' psyches and really scaring the shit out of them. And he would have had to be a very good actor to do that. And the more I think about it, having heard some of the stuff Abby's telling me about Mike, maybe that actually does make some sense. So Charlie has a couple of other things, and I want to try to abbreviate this because I feel like we're running out of time. She goes in deep. But one of the things that she talks about is she talks about all of the different statements that Travis made, that the different crew made, and she pulls out maps, and she talks about things that Travis has said to podcasters, and that MUFON had documented, and then that GSW had documented about how fast they were going and how long they had been driving. Based on witness statements, they were definitely driving for at least 5 minutes, but maybe as long as 15 minutes on the road. But the place where the official abduction site is only a few hundred yards from their work site. So her assertion is there's no way that the abduction site is where they say it was if they were genuinely on the road for 15 minutes, for 10 or 15 minutes. It just doesn't add up. And I would agree with her. I think that that's correct.
Yeah.
I think her assessment of that is correct. But the thing is, like, for me, it's 6 a.m. Sorry, that's my time. It's 6 p.m. It's dark out. They're tired. They're stoned, some of them. They're sick, some of them. They're stressed out. Even Mike is stressed out to some degree because he's trying to get this stupid contract done. I don't know how reliable they can be when you're thinking about how long they were actually on the road or what road they actually took. And she actually did some amazing analysis and made a really good case for them actually being on Rim Road and not on one of the other logging roads. And JT, I kind of wanted to ask you, because I feel like you know the terrain a little bit better than me. One of the big pieces of her argument are sandbars. Do you know what those are, JT?
Sandbars. Well,
in the road.
They usually use those to deflect water, so they can determine where the water runs along the side of the roads.
Yeah, I had not known that at all until I looked it up. Do they have those on the logging roads up in Heber? You've been up there a lot more than me.
They really only have them on the highly traveled roads that they don't want to have to grade all the time. So, but that
like maybe Rim Road.
That road is a highly traveled road, at least nowadays. Back then, I don't know.
I think it's confirmed Rim Road definitely had sandbars. But the question is, did any of the smaller logging roads have sandbars? And it sounds like you're saying no, probably not. So you're confirming what Charlie is saying.
Probably not, no.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I'm not 100%, they
so
could.
What Charlie says is a big part of their story is they were fishtailing all the time because they kept having to bump over these sandbars. And her statement is, how could they have been on one of the smaller logging roads if they're going over these damn sandbars? Because none of those logging roads have sandbars. Rim Road does. So she's saying they were definitely on Rim Road based on some of the context clues from all of the different witness statements, which was some really excellent detective work on her part.
Seriously, that is some great, like, that's good attention to detail. Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. She's an excellent analyst. I got to give her that. There's a couple of things that bother me a lot. So part of her discussion, in addition to, she says they're on Rim Road. She says that there was a clearing, but then it was not really a clearing because witness statements changed and it was actually like, well, I'm going to start over. The part that really bothers me is part of her argument for it being Gentry Watchtower are statements made by a gentleman by the name of Ryan Gordon. And Ryan Gordon is a movie producer who reached out to who reached out to Travis. And I think it's probably safe to say Travis probably never met a movie producer he didn't want to talk to. And that there were a lot of conversations separately between Ryan and Travis and Ryan and Mike. And that separately, Ryan was able to get testimony from both of them that it was a hoax and that Gentry Tower was the UFO. That bothers me. There's an issue that I have with that, but we can talk about that later. But basically, she says that based on the descriptions from the witnesses, that it was glass, there were partitions, it was like pie, what do they say? 2 pie trays stacked on top of each other, and the dimensions of it. She feels like it's a shoo-in for the Gentry Watchtower because of the dimensions, because of the light. She feels like if somebody was inside, another accomplice was inside Gentry Tower and turned on all the lights and opened up the solar panels or whatever, it would look like a UFO. I disagree with that. We were physically present
too,
on the
yeah.
site. It doesn't make sense. Even if the trees and the scenery were different, even if it matches what she's saying it had to have looked like at the time, that tower, it's so high. It's actually, it's not in the tree line at all, which were some of the statements that Mike and some of the others had made, that it was under the canopy of the tree. It's not. That tower's very high.
70 feet.
And, I know she's saying that, if they came at it from the right angle and they had trees in front of them, it would have obscured. And yeah, it would have obscured some of the vision of the thing. But it would not have been so low that it was within the tree line, like the canopy line. And it's so boxy. Like, to me, I find it really hard to believe. I mean, I guess if you're stoned and you're stressed, maybe, but it's so squared off and boxy looking, even with those flaps open. My personal opinion is I don't think it looks like a UFO at all. The other problem is Gentry Tower didn't wobble, and all of the witnesses agree that they saw some kind of wobbling of the craft after Travis was, quote unquote, shocked or zapped by the UFO. So there's a few other issues I have with it. But I think
to that, though, like, isn't that the whole point, was to trick them and to convince them and confuse them?
I'm not saying Charlie's entirely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's not possible that they were tricked.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I really don't think it's Gentry.
I personally like the picture that she shares on her website, where she kind of shows, where she shows kind of like the angle that she's talking about. I don't know if it's her picture or not, and I can't even find it now to look at it, but it's emblazoned in my mind that even compared to the pictures that they provide, it does look kind of similar, and that gradually over time they've been able to tweak the description and change the drawings to kind of change the story and make it seem less and less like Gentry Tower. That's something that she suggests, and I find that compelling. The wobbling thing throws me off.
The wobbling thing bothers me. It makes me think it couldn't possibly be Gentry. If we are willing to give people the benefit of the doubt and say, yeah, I think maybe the skeptics are onto something.
Here,
I really don't think it's Gentry.
I'm going to interrupt you. This is from the...
Oh. And the guy said that the ship started rocking and started building up a high-pitched whine.
That's the original, like when it's originally was being called into the MUFON or whoever they are, the Seattle-based reporting agency. this is an old man calling in and giving the account of the story. So even back then, and this is just a person of a person of a person, the story's reached him, and he says this line.
And the guy said that the ship started rocking and started building up a high-pitched whine.
The sound bothers me. That's an issue that bothers me. The rocking bothers me. That's an issue that bothers me. Additionally, Steve, who claims he's always had questions and never really believed it was actually UFOs, states in his account that remained the same for many, 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 many years up until about 2022 that he saw the ship depart.
Yeah.
He's always been very clear about that.
He
I
even
saw
said it was
leave.
rocking, and they all say they saw something leave.
So
confusing. Well, and so it makes
That's-
you wonder, could there have been two different elements there? Could they have done both the Gentry Tower and like a little balloon? Or, like you said, maybe the whole thing was this little UFO kit and they were being deceived. I don't know. It's fodder. It's all
Mhm.
little pieces of evidence.
There's two other points I'd like to make about that too. Like if you're lighting up Gentry Tower, not only are you lighting up the surrounding area, but you're lighting up the whole structure of the tower underneath it.
Mhm.
The legs, the ladders.
Well, she's
and-
saying they
and
couldn't
anything else
see
that's
it from
under-
where they were. It was blocked
She's
by
saying
trees.
that the
If you're on
angle-
that rim road, and we've been on that road, it is so close to the road. There's no way in hell you wouldn't light up the legs and the ladders up.
She's got a diagram of like a campground next to the Gentry thing with like a little road. That's not like entirely accurate to my recollection of when JT and I actually went there. It's right on the road. It's like literally
on
right
the
there.
road. Right there. There's a campground next to it, yes, but that's also on the road, but it's to the east of it. No, to the let me orient myself. Gentry Tower looks north. Yeah, to the east of it.
I mean, we can say there was a huge ass fire that happened there
Mhm.
after this.
Yes.
So maybe it's possible that there were a lot more trees there at the time, but I didn't actually think that the Gentry Hill was affected by that fire. I thought
No,
it
I
was
don't
the
think
valley
so.
below.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, continue, JT. Was that your only point, or did you have another?
That wasn't my only point. My other question is in the retelling of the story. They talk about when they see the light through the trees, and someone said that's the moon. Then someone says, no, the moon's over there. I looked up what the moon would have been.
Me too.
Nice.
I
It would
also
have
wanted to
been-
see it.
Very thorough.
It would have been a waxing moon.
Waxing
And it would have been
crescent.
to the west, and it would have been a crescent, and it would have been very low in the sky. So, what else did you find about that, Amanda?
No, I was just curious because I wanted to know what the light conditions would have been like. I mean, up there, you can see everything in the sky. There is no city lights. There's not. It is so dark, you can see every single star in the sky clear as day. So I wanted to know, was the moon full? Like, was it providing a lot of extra light? So, like, what were the lighting conditions? But it was waxing crescent, so it would not have actually been very high light
Nope.
at that particular day. It would have been pretty low light from the moon, which I actually think is in favor of their statements. It would have made it harder to discern details about Gentry Tower if indeed it was Gentry Tower.
But, and I'm just going to interject this, not saying that it's one way or another. The moon being on the west side does give credence to Gentry Tower because Gentry Tower would be on the opposite side of where the moon was.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. The way the road goes, because I mean the road's very windy and goes all around different directions, but in that specific spot, it's kind of coming at a more of a from out of the north.
All right.
Northeast.
Sorry. Okay, it was a good point. Let's go ahead and
Wait,
what?
I have one
Next.
more thing.
One more
I have
thing.
one more thing. There is one more thing about this. Steve now says he believes it was Gentry. And 2 days after, and I'm going to need Cameron's help with this, 2 days after Travis disappears, Steve's uncle drives him to the Gentry Watchtower and says, "Did your UFO look like that?" And Steve's uncle's trying to tell him, "Kid, you got played. It wasn't really UFO. It was this tower." And so part of my question is that really raises concerns for me, because if some random community member believes the tower was involved, how come, Charlie's assertion is Gentry was never searched and it was never considered part of the investigation. It was never checked, and that Travis Walton was hiding in that building, or maybe his mom's cabin. So Cameron, I was wondering if you were able to find like the search area that was traveled. Was Gentry checked or not?
They said 10 mile plus in a couple of articles, but that's actually unconfirmed. I looked at it and it says 10 plus in a couple of these sites, but it's not confirmed. What they did is they used that as like his work area. So his work area, the closest town, that is kind of what they included in the general search area. So I don't have particulars.
Okay. So we can't know for sure, but Charlie asserts Gentry was never checked. But here we have a random town member who's saying Gentry is definitely the UFO, you were faked. So how come a random town member can say this building is involved and is a part of it, but not the trained detectives and sheriffs?
You want to know why? Because the trained detectives and sheriffs were they definitely thought that Travis was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
You could still hide a body up there.
There were tower people on watch, and they worked in 5-day shifts, and apparently they could leave at night.
Yep.
And so part of this whole story is that he might have had a friend who worked in there and like left and gave him access to the tower for the night or whatever, and then he left and hid somewhere else, his mom's cabin, which they never bothered to search. And that's the other part of the issue.
Makes
is
sense,
the mom
because
kept go ahead.
Well, because the mom called off the search after like day 2. Let me see. Let me go here. Travis's mother requests to stop searching, saying there's no use. Deputies record this as strange behavior. That was on November 7th, 2 days after he went missing. Just 2. So if he was up in the tower and he did go to their cabin and she knew about it, she would have called it off shortly after. Maybe she waited a day so that way it wouldn't be too suspicious.
So here's some other things about the mom, and I didn't even intend to talk about this. So it's also speculated that he might have hid at that cabin because that was like a family friend's cabin that she would kind of like snowbird into. It was too hot in the valley during the summer, so she would go and stay in this other cabin up in the rim. And then when it started to cool off, she would go back down to her normal home. Well, a lot of people said it was really bizarre that she was still there at this point on November 5th, 6th, 7th, when it was reported that it was supposed to start snowing any day. People were like, why is she still there? Then, right after they started the search was when she left. And she was calling off the search. So some people speculate that it's possible like this whole thing happened. He is hiding out. She's like, okay, I'm going to get the heat off your back and I'm going to go back home. That way, if they ever want to come talk to me, I'm not at this cabin and there's no reason for them to come here and search this cabin. That is one school of thought that I've heard that is interesting. And again, circumstantial, hearsay, all ideas, but smart. Could have been.
In direct opposition to that, there are people who are saying that she was heavily sedated, that Copland himself, who reported how calm she was, how eerily calm she was, would say at any given time 3 or 4 different quotes. Like he never really could land on the same quote every time he was asked what it was she said in the notification. But his thing was she was too calm. And so when asked about, is every family in a situation where you're notifying them that their kin is missing very emotional, he said, well, no, not all the time. And so he was able to acknowledge that sometimes people are very calm.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
So like that was part of it. And then the other thing was Dwayne, Travis's brother, had his own UFO encounter years prior to this. So as a family, they had already had some exposure and some discussion. Apparently Dwayne was the UFO fanatic. And in addition to that, so she was hearing all of this stuff from people that she trusted. And this is all from Travis. This is in his books. We got to take it with a grain of salt. But he's saying she began to become calm, A, because she was sedated, and B, because she had kids who she trusted and she had watched grow up, telling her what they saw. So she absolutely 100% believed he was safe somewhere with alien intelligences. So for her, he's not dead. It's okay. He's going to come back eventually.
Didn't Travis also say to her that, hey, I may be abducted by aliens, but don't worry because I'll come back safe?
Maybe. I don't know that he put that in this book because that seems a little damning.
All right.
But
listen to this.
anyway.
Hold on.
Well, Ralph Anderson's a very good friend of mine, and his brother Travis is a young man about 22. And he's always made the statement around the country to everyone that knows him that he'd like to have some way of making communication with them.
Yes.
And they were talking about this kind of a thing, ironically, at the time, and they saw this light about 20 foot hovering from the ground, and before they actually stopped their truck, Travis jumped out of the car and ran up underneath of this thing, if you can imagine.
So there's that. And that same guy, it has such an impression on him. He says it literally a second time in that phone call.
Travis had been talking about this, and the whole country knows this. He's always wanted to communicate with these people, I don't believe this or not. And before they ever got the truck stopped, he ran out there underneath that thing with his hands stretched up in the air as a gesture of friendliness or helpness or something.
I think that he's saying country as hyperbole, just like anybody who will listen kind of thing. Or maybe he means like country, like the mountains.
Like the countryside, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There's actually one more. Hold on, where is that?
Okay, then Travis, he has always had an interest in this subject.
Yes, he has. He's got a high IQ and everything. He's really... He's level-headed, is he? He never pulled anything dumb like this or anything like this, where it'd be a hoax or anything.
Yes.
And,
okay, so there's two reasons why I liked that clip. The first half is his brother answering the question. Again, this is just the reporting agency where people can call from around the country and report a sighting. And this guy is just asking them questions, and the brother says, yeah, he's really into them. Then there's this article, The Profitable Nightmare of a Very Unreal Kind by Jeff Wells. He was the reporter sent by the National Enquirer to go and get the story on it, like firsthand when Travis came back, which is a whole other part of it, the National Enquirer. But he says in his article in which he's looking back on the experience, it seemed that the kid's father, who had deserted him as a child, had been a spaceship fanatic, and all his life the kid had wanted to ride in a spacecraft. In addition to his brother having some sort of experience as a kid, like years prior,
yeah.
He'd also allegedly seen a bunch more recently than that in the forest. And then he also had an hour-long interview with Bill Spalding of GSW, where Dwayne is just on repeat saying he's fine. He knows where he is, and I know where he is, and these things are peaceful, and everything's going to be fine, and it's going to be okay. And they're like, okay, well, are you going to be out there in the forest with a camera, like waiting for him to come back? And he says something weird like, no, because they won't come if I have a camera. Something bizarre like that. I mean, so yeah, there is support that says Dwayne was hyper into it, but there's also a lot of feedback and testimony. There's newspaper articles that I found in that MUFON case file where people in the town just understood that this was a interest and fascination of this family. Cameron, what did you find on that? And you looked into it and you didn't feel that strongly that he was.
That he was abducted?
That he was a UFO buff. And this becomes a pretty big point deeper into my segment. So go ahead and tell us what you were able to find out.
There was that airing of the... Hold on.
Betty and Barney?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
I have a question. Wouldn't that have been primetime? Like, that would have been in the evening, wouldn't it? I really thought it was a primetime viewing.
It was.
But what about
Yeah,
that?
it was.
Well, they said that very day he wrote a letter to some people.
He wrote a letter trying to get the extension, and they said act of God.
Right. So the implication is he watched that movie or watched the show that night, and then immediately after, like late at night. Well, I guess I'm such a freaking old person. I go right to bed.
He might have written the letter earlier in the day.
Oh, I thought the implication was he wrote the letter after seeing the Barney and Betty thing because that was inspiration for him to get his act of God.
Well, and remember, the letter had nothing to do with aliens or anything. The letter was just, this isn't going well and I need an extension. And then that same day, the show was on. The show aired. Possibly, right, Cameron? Planting a seed? Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah, so then he gets the idea to, hey, if they need an act of God, maybe this would count as an act of God.
And this is Mike we're talking about.
So they continue working, and as he sees that, sure enough, they're not going to be able to complete their contract 5 days before, just enough time for them to go ahead and file for an extension. And then it was the day of that final deadline, midnight. That's when he reappears.
And now we're talking about Travis.
When it's sure the deadline is over, the contract is done, and okay, you can come back. They're not giving us an extension.
Yeah.
It's just the timing is just too perfect, right? So 2 weeks before he sees this thing,
Travis watches the Betty and Barney Hill primetime special.
The UFO incident where a bright light stops a car, and then the beings examine the abductee on a medical table. There's needles, instruments, geometric lights, missing time themes, all of this that is in his missing person abduction. And that aired on the 20th. That's the same day that he wrote, probably earlier in the day. So it's fresh on his mind when he sees this airing about getting a extension on his logging contract. They say no, act of God. He is aware of the $2,500 penalty. They're all already tight on their budget. They're probably paying more to get this contract done than they're receiving. So that would have been a huge hit. You said that he was going to get $3,000 probably paid out to him. $2,000 reduced off of that.
Yeah. And that was big money back then.
Mhm.
That meant something.
Yeah.
Considering they were making $3 and $6 an hour, $3,000 is a lot of money.
Gas was like 70 cents a gallon then.
And that's a really good point. That's one important piece of motivation, and that's one musing to help them create this idea. Then we've got, some of this feedback that Travis's whole family is kind of into this and knows their stuff about these things and ufology and what gets reported. And then you add in Cameron's point that Travis Walton's story has a lot of glaring similarities to that of Betty and Barney Hill. Then you've got, back to this article, Profitable Nightmare of a Very Unreal Kind by Jeff Wells. He says, my paper, and he's very careful not to name his paper, but it's well understood that it was the National Enquirer. He's a writer, and he's not going to get pegged for libel. This is a very interesting article about his account as the reporter who went to work on that case. So he says, my paper had offered tens of thousands of dollars to anybody who could positively prove that aliens had visited our planet. It is speculated that this was a part of the motivation on Travis's part, was to be able to submit this story, to create this hoax, have this story, and be able to submit it to the Enquirer and win himself some big money. There are some places where I've heard it inaccurately said that it was $100,000, but that's not right. Even to say tens of thousands is the most that I've heard. I've heard concretely for sure 10,000. Regardless, as a result of what went down in that hotel room, they were like, no. And they did give him the $5,000 because it was still a great story.
This is the same magazine that I remember as a kid and teenager and young adult having at the newsstands that had stories about Mothman and Elvis Presley still alive.
Hitler's secret lifestyle.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a tabloid.
100-pound woman gives birth to a 20-pound baby. And
man is pregnant with woman's secret love child.
Joke.
it was a joke, but they were like, this is a little unbelievable.
Yes.
They believe everything, but they were like, nah, hard pass.
Not
But
this.
I mean, I guess money was on the line, but still.
We're like, I want to be able to tell every little detail of this article, but I'm going to go ahead and just brief it up for you guys. He's there at the hotel room. Travis has already contacted the sheriff's office. This is after he's back, by the way, and he's with his brother, and they're hiding because he's in trauma and they don't want to get harassed. They had already contacted the sheriff's office and agreed to do a lie detector test with them. Then there's a whole story about why that doesn't end up happening. Quick, necessary digression for context. Travis alleges that the reason why they don't go through with the sheriff's lie detector test is because they only agreed to do it under the conditions that they keep it quiet, don't tell the press, like we don't want to be bombarded by people on our way in. And then they mistakenly believe that the examiner has released he's doing this polygraph, but really he was having a press briefing about the polygraph that had been done on the other guys.
Oh, Cy Gilson.
Yes.
I wish he could have been examined by Cy.
Me too. But I've got very significant information. So he cancels that polygraph examination. And according to Jeff Wells, the author of this article and the National Enquirer investigative journalist who was there on the scene in the hotel room with Travis, it was actually the National Enquirer people who convinced Walton and his brother to call off that polygraph exam with the sheriff and Cy Gilson so that the National Enquirer could get the results in real time and have first dibs on the scoop and the story. He takes their lie detector test. This is the same time that he does Harder's hypnotherapy. Okay? Same time. He does a polygraph test and fails.
Yep.
And by the way, everybody skims over this. Nobody talks about this first test he took. Everybody just tries to hide it and sweep it under the rug. So here it is. Walton Travis, November 16th, 1975. This is his little write-up. John J. McCarthy is the examiner. Okay, on November 15th, Travis C. Walton was given a polygraph examination for the National Enquirer at the request of Mr. Paul Jenkins. Reference Walton's recent UFO experience. I'm pretty sure Paul Jenkins is, somebody who works for the National Enquirer. The examination commenced at 1425 and was concluded at 1615. So roughly about 2 hours long, pretty legit.
Mm-hmm.
During the examination, he showed gross deception on the charts as he answered the following relevant questions as indicated. Were you actually taken aboard a spacecraft near Heber on November 5th? Were you actually in a spacecraft from the 5th to the 10th of November? Have you lied to Dr. Harder about being in a spacecraft? Have you acted in collusion with others to perpetrate a UFO hoax? Did you lie to any of Sheriff Gillespie's questions concerning your disappearance? Were you hiding somewhere in Arizona during your disappearance? Have you been advised by anyone to lie on this examination? Here's his results. His reactions on the control test, before asking the hard questions, were normal. He appeared to be lucid and prior to testing stated that he understood each of the questions to be asked and that he could answer each with a yes or no. It was obvious during the examination that he was deliberately attempting to distort his respiration pattern. Based on his reactions on all charts, it is the opinion of this examiner that Walton, in concert with others, is attempting to perpetrate a UFO hoax and that he has not been on any spacecraft. And the National Enquirer, they packed up. Like everybody packed up. CBS News was there. The National Enquirer was there. There was more than just the National Enquirer there. So anyway, this guy who wrote this article, he's like, well, that was so disappointing. Most of these people were very disappointed and left. Apparently later that day, APRO's psychiatrists come in to do their analysis of Walton. Quoting Jeff Wells, to head that off, we had the psychiatrists put the cowboy and the kid. The cowboy is Dwayne and the kid is Travis through a long session of analysis. Their methods were unique. The four of them disappeared into a room, and soon a waiter headed in there with 2 bottles of cognac. At the end of it, the psychiatrists were rolling drunk, but they had their story and the brothers were crestfallen. This is when it says, it seemed that the kid's father, who had deserted him as a child, had been a spaceship fanatic, and all his life the kid had wanted to ride in a spacecraft. He had seen something out there in the woods, some kind of an eerie light that had triggered a powerful hallucination that might recur at any time. There was no question of any kidnapped by mushroom men. The kid needed medical help. So this guy leaves this whole encounter after being there for several days, after the National Enquirer paid thousands of dollars for the room, paid him $1,000 to give them exclusive rights to the story. This isn't even the prize. And then he has paid the bar tab after APRO showed up and did their analysis of him and got him drunk. And he went home and wrote a 16-page memorandum for the National Enquirer that would kill the story, he said. And a week later, his story was put out on the front cover of the National Enquirer, but with some tweaks and changes. And the headline is, these 5 dudes passed the lie detector test, and this guy was abducted by a UFO. And they completely omit Travis Walton's failed lie detector test. And APRO goes on record almost immediately talking about how they told him not to do a lie detector test, that he would be too fragile. He would be in such an emotional, stressful state that it would always have to be inconclusive. And people asked, well, then why were the other guys able to take a lie detector test? And their answer is, well, they weren't in the same level of stress as he was. To which I say, yes, they were.
Yeah, they just saw their best friend or a good friend disappear. No idea.
They were scared to tears, shaking. Like, everybody said they could visibly see it.
They thought they were going to jail for murder. Yeah.
Part of the reason why Steve says he disappeared was that one of those dudes, one of the deputies, had rolled up to him and just like very confidently was just like, we don't need a body in the state of Arizona to convict you for murder, right? He was like, we're gonna get you guys. And Steve was scared shitless. That's part of the reason why he was just like,
Deuces.
I don't want to be around. And he said everybody in the town was harassing them and calling them murderers and had basically already like accused them of being guilty.
Yeah.
So I just think that's a pretty high emotional state that it sounds like they were in, and that's some weird crap to say. That's not a good argument for Walton not passing this test. Then in February, so this is all November of 1975, we're saying. Then February or March of 1976, they redo the polygraph. The examiner that they chose, John McCarthy, had over 20 years of experience, was trained at a the most respected and credible military polygraph school. And
this is John McCarthy for the first polygraph,
for the first
or the one in February?
For the first one, the one that the National Enquirer hired to do the polygraph exam. He was a great choice.
Okay.
He was very well qualified, and he was often used by the court to perform examinations, and he had a lot of experience and knew what he was doing. Then in February or March of 1976, they do another one, which he passes, but there's a huge problem with that one, and that is the guy that they choose. This now is the Lorenzens of APRO. They choose a guy who's from Ezel and Associates, a polygraph company in Arizona. And Ezel, the head associate of this company, is out of town. They have this other guy who's pretty new. He's only been there for a year, and he performs the examination, and Walton passes. Now, what they failed to mention is that they controlled what questions they were allowed to ask him. They didn't do the full length of time that they're supposed to do. And this guy was not very experienced, and he wasn't certified. Like, he didn't complete his accreditation that he was supposed to do through his college. He went to a formal college, but then after a year of experience, basically out in the field, you're supposed to submit your hours, and he never went through that. Now, Ezel, the head associate of that company that he worked for, comes back and he sees the results and he reports to Philip Klass, I would have thrown this polygraph out. The methodology was not legit. And the results, reading over the results, I would have called these inconclusive. this is not really a passed or valid polygraph examination. Then you throw that on top of the 2000 whatever on Fox Moment of Truth polygraph that he takes on national television, and he fails the question, like, were you abducted? And he fails that on national TV. So we've got like 3 polygraph examinations that he has failed. But back then in real time, APRO, the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, they were going through the motion. They were like his personal PR team pushing this story, pushing things under the rug, and personally attacking the professional qualifications of anybody that dare contradict them or argue against, any of their decisions or choices and try to call it a hoax. And I'm a little disappointed because I have so much to speak to on that, and it's so juicy. The MUFON report is, again, 350 pages of just back and forth nonsense. But basically, the reason why the story got as much traction as it did, I think, is because APRO had board members on the Blue Ribbon panel who judged the National Enquirer stories. And so they had some pull in getting the story pushed through rather than killed. And then on top of that, they had funding to gain. There is documentation within these case files of them writing out to their members in a newsletter or something, a memo where they're talking about how at their next gala, I don't know, let's just say at their next thing where all of their donors are going to be, all of their like best
They're benefactors.
There we go.
Their patrons
are going to get pushed this story so that we can try to give some validity to ufology, and we're hopefully increase our funding. So anyway, there's so much to it, and that sounds so weak sauce compared to all the little bits and nuggets and pieces of information that I ultimately have about this. But it turns out that it was actually GSW who was down there on the ground doing all the initial investigating, who was feeding Philip Glass like most of the information he had. So we've already talked about how Harder was like a civil engineer or something, right? The guy who performed the hypnotherapy, the hypnosis on.
Yeah. I think we talked about that last episode.
Yes. So remember, listeners, that I botched my report of what happened when Travis came back. What happened was his brother Dwayne had been in touch with Bill Spalding of the GSW, or William Spalding. Spalding put them in touch with this Dr. Stewart, and they bailed. According to them, essentially the reason they bailed is because they felt like GSW was uncoordinated. They were upset that they were sent to a regressive hypnotist at all and not sent to a doctor. And they stay with Dr. Stewart for a couple of hours while he's trying to get them a medical doctor. They get really pissed at him and they leave. But here's what you should know. Coming back full circle to APRO versus GSW, APRO's hypnotist is a civil engineer versus GSW's Dr. Lester Stewart, who, by the way, APRO attacked as not being a qualified hypnotist. Not only does he have a doctorate in psychology from California Western University in Santa Ana, but he also, in spring and summer of 1974, he did a voluntary internship in psychology at North Mountain Behavioral Institute, utilizing hypnosis as a method of rehabilitating hardcore drug addicts with considerable effectiveness. He is regional vice president of the International Society for Professional Hypnosis, president of the Arizona Society for Professional Hypnosis, professional member in good standing of the American Public Health Association, and I promise the list keeps going. He is the owner and director, or was anyway, of Modern Hypnosis Instruction Center in Phoenix, Arizona, which I believe is where Travis and Dwayne came to visit him. This is a highly qualified individual. Dr. Stewart had clinical experience very successfully using hypnotherapy to aid drug addicts. And so when Walton came in the door and he was disoriented and acting weird, and the only sign of any physical trauma that he had was this puncture wound in his arm, he was willing to give Travis the benefit of the doubt that he had just been through something and that this was just his reaction. But then after a while, Travis started to come out of his fog and hysteria and weirdness. And he was like, this was the spitting image of seeing somebody come down from drugs. I've seen this so many times. I know what I'm looking at, and I don't trust this. It's possible that his body language or something he said spooked them, because it is William Spalding's hypothesis that the reason Travis and Dwayne chose to sever ties with their organization and not submit to further testing with them is because they learned what Dr. Stewart's specialty was, and they were like, no, get me out of here. And for the record, John McCarthy, who performed the first polygraph test, he had asked Travis like ahead of time, okay, like, have you ever done drugs? Have you done that? Like, he was going through the motions, and Travis actually cleared the air and said, yes, I have. I've done XYZ things, more than just weed, right? And so he came right out front to this guy and said, yes, I have done drugs. Meanwhile, the APRO, their big claim to fame was he wasn't on drugs then or ever, and he was never a UFO buff. He could have never come up with this in a million years because he knew nothing about aliens. He hasn't taken a polygraph test because we think that he's too sensitive and fragile right now and can't do it, and it would be inconclusive and useless anyway. To put it simply, they lied. The whole thing was a huge mess, and it was fascinating to go through and read the documents. It was so juicy, and there was just so much back and forth correspondence between GSW and APRO for a hot minute, just where they're like slipping each other little like snide comments and things, and like trying to be cordial and share like pertinent UFO information. Like, you know, they're all ufologists. They're on the same team supposedly. So at least it's my opinion that William Spalding was trying to just be as scientific as possible.
Because if you let a hoax get through and be accredited as like, this is a real story, it hurts the whole field.
Ding, 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 ding. Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you. Exactly. So he had some beef with them, and it's alleged from all of them that he was just mad that Travis didn't choose him. I don't know, maybe, but I didn't get that impression from his work, although it did seem a bit spiteful the way that he went. He fed so much information to Philip Glass. I wish that there was more time. The only other thing that there is to talk about is, real quickly, Ryan Gordon.
All right, Ryan Gordon shows on the scene. He says he's a producer. He wants to make a movie. He later comes out after everything is said and done and says, Travis Walton told me it was a hoax. Mike told me it was a hoax. I have a recording of Mike saying to me on the phone it was all a hoax. So then he releases the recording, and Mike says, hey, that is fake. That was audio trickery. He just took bits and pieces of conversations between us and glued them all together to make it sound like I said something that I never said.
Takes
this guy's
one
a
to
liar.
know one.
Does that sound familiar?
Yes, takes one to know one.
So my question is, the Philip Glass drama, is this karma for Mike? This new thing with Ryan Gordon.
Oh.
So I just thought it was kind of full circle that, you know, Mike accuses Philip Glass of taking his recordings and editing this
that's
way.
the karma. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the karma.
Yeah,
and
right.
then turns around and is, you know, allegedly experiences the exact same thing from Ryan Gordon. And Ryan Gordon says, no, you're full of shit. This is true. And a lot of people take Ryan Gordon's side. In fact, some of Charlie Weiser's analysis is based on the conversations that are said to have had between Ryan Gordon and Travis and Ryan Gordon and Mike. And there was a lot of fallout because Mike was pretty pissed at Travis because he felt like Travis was going to try to cut him out of a movie and money that could have been made from that movie. Well, here's the thing. Charlie Weiser herself, because I wanted to know who she was, wrote this scathing article about there is this whole Anjali person who said that she met some aliens under the property of some guy named Wayne, and it was like I don't know. It's a whole thing, right? Ryan Gordon is involved, and he says he interviewed Wayne, who owns the property, and has all of this information proving that Anjali is a fake. Well, he got some of the details wrong when he's claiming she's a fake, so they knew that he was lying about some of the things that he was asserting that he had proof of. So Anjali was like, prove it, bitch. I know that you didn't talk to Wayne because none of what you're saying right now is true. And in fact, he could prove nothing and could be proven had fabricated quite a bit of stuff. Charlie Weiser wrote this scathing article, not saying that Anjali herself was telling the truth either. She felt like Anjali was also a liar, but saying Ryan Gordon can be proved to have lied about all of these things, and yet that same year has no difficulty trusting the testimony of the same person that she herself has proved as a liar. That bothers me.
Okay, so about that though, I went way deep into that rabbit hole also, and I can tell you she did not prove that he was a liar, that he fabricated evidence. I can say she proved your point about her having absolutist language to be correct. However, going down that rabbit hole, I can say that there's something a little fishy about Ryan Gordon in that situation. And I don't even know how to get into it because that is very muddy water. And so there's the potential for a whole side episode on that one. That being said, I suppose it's kind of a completely moot point even bringing him up.
I think it's important because a lot of people point to the Ryan Gordon testimony is when it all fractured and it all broke up, and they admitted it was a hoax, but you can't trust what Ryan Gordon says. Maybe they did tell him that. I can't understand why they would, but you can't trust it.
After all this time, they were really going to make a deal with somebody to make a documentary about how it was a hoax?
Yeah.
I don't know. Were they really that tapped out of no, it was real people?
I just don't believe it.
I don't know. But here's something, okay? Steve, the timeline, okay? The years that you talk about how Steve, he had consistent and then all of a sudden changed, that was the same time frame that the 6 dudes had sworn off Travis officially and permanently and said, we are no longer with this guy. We are not supporting him. And specifically, their only claim was, we saw a UFO, though. We're just not going to say that he got kidnapped anymore because honestly, we didn't see that. And now that he failed this lie detector test on national TV, we're done. And then Mike begins going on different podcasts and just telling everybody in the world about what a lying sack of junk Travis is and how none of these guys are interested in him anymore except for John Collette. So
I really have to go. I've got 3 hours left to finish an assignment. I gotta go. But you guys can continue without me. I can't
Cameron,
stay.
Believe or don't believe, you're a skeptic or not?
I do not believe. 100%. I think they made it up. I think they got a quick idea. They thought it was going to give them an extension, and it turned into something bigger, and they just stuck with it.
Yeah.
But
word.
All right.
Well, thank you for joining us, and Cameron, good studies. And
sorry we kept you so long, bro.
Sorry. Yeah, and sorry that we.
Good luck.
All right.
This is not boding well for me as an episode.
Actually,
writer.
I think we should give you another run. I just really didn't like this topic, but you did a good job.
Yeah.
I think we shouldn't have done a second episode for this.
I got that same feeling too. But I do think there's a lot of really cool things that we all had to talk about. There was some really good conversation.
For sure. The conversation was genuine.
Yeah.
You guys did find some stuff in there that was actually really good, but I'm tired and have homework to do. But
Yeah.
Abby, we should give you another go because you did do a good job.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate
All
that.
right.
Thanks, Cameron.
I'll see you guys later.
Bye, brother.
All right,
Love
good
you.
night.
Bye.
All right, hold on. So let me just do this one thing. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to play. Again, you guys have already heard this.
Okay, then Travis, he has always had an interest in this subject.
Yes, he has. He's got a high IQ and everything. He's really... He's level-headed, isn't he? He never pulled anything dumb like this or anything like this, where it'd be a hoax or anything.
Yes.
And,
Okay, too high of an IQ to ever do anything like this. Anybody remember this from the last episode?
Travis was a wild card. He told a story in the book, I think it was the book, about a time where they were driving past and there was this big-ass bear that almost got hit by the truck. And he jumped out of the truck and charged this big old bear. And then the bear, already freaked out by the car, runs away. And the guys were like, what the hell was that? And he was just that kind of crazy guy. Like, he just did that kind of stuff. I actually had a flashback to that when you had that. I was like, he wouldn't do anything crazy like that? Because he directly says he did crazy shit like that and on purpose in his book.
Yeah.
Also, if anybody could pull off something this complex, is it gonna be an average Joe dummy or is it gonna be a really smart person?
With a high IQ.
Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Anyway, JT, talk more, and then I'll close it out. What are you thinking, man? You started this episode. You're like, nope, I still believe it.
I do. I still believe. I still believe he was abducted. I still believe that. I just don't see if you're going to go this long, this many years, 50 years per. Keeping this a hoax, I just don't see it.
Okay, well, just remember this title: "Profitable Nightmare of a Very Unreal Kind." That's what Jeff Wells writes. Some of the characters are still growing fat, repeating their versions of the story in the seemingly limitless American market for the bizarre.
True.
That's Jeff Wells. So, but you're still not going to be turned.
They're not like millionaires.
No. It sounds like they're no.
They don't have a lot of money. No. Mike Rogers still had to work.
Yeah.
He worked his whole life, and
they all did.
Travis, he also had to work.
In fact, that's an argument for why they're all so pissed at Travis, is because he kept hogging up all the money from all the interviews.
Yeah.
Sorry, JT.
I hear that.
But
so I think that's fair. The problem is that it's all hearsay.
The most recent thing that I found, it was on HBO Max. 2022 was a retelling of the story, retelling of everything, with several of the guys on there, John and Mike,
the ones who are alive, right?
The ones who are alive, yeah. And they still say it happened.
Right. Well, so that's still around the same era where they're like, no, we rebuke you, sir. But then HBO Max puts on a documentary and they're like, all right, we'll come along for the ride one more time. I wonder how much they were paid for that gig. Is my mindset. I don't know. Anyway, I'm always open-minded. It could have been real, but there's actually just a mountain of holes of reasonable doubt poked left and right into their character and the story, and I don't know. Their whole claim to fame was these guys passed a lie detector test. That was one of the things that they still use today to tout, like, come on, we passed a lie detector test. But everybody's already figured out, well, the lie detector test wasn't about that. It cleared you of murder. And then Travis failed numerous lie detector tests, which is kind of not great for him.
There actually is a letter from Cy Gilson in here regarding the lie detector test that he gave. And he says that there was a series of questions that did involve a UFO.
Really? Because I have one from him too, where he specifies what they were, and it was just 4 questions.
Yeah, it's 4 categories so they call it 4 questions, but they ask, it's basically categories. So 3 of them were about murder. Did you murder or harm or seek to harm,
Mhm.
whatever, did you see a UFO? And it involves the question of a UFO. And today, in 1993, I am still of the same opinion that they were valid examinations and the results were conclusive on the 5.
Yeah.
Even though there was only one question asked that related to the UFO sighting, it was a valid question, and the results proved none of you were lying when stating you saw an object that you believe was a UFO. The other 3 relevant questions asked during that examination were to determine if any of you had caused the death of Travis Walton. So it's not like, did you see a UFO, but do you believe you saw a UFO was the 4th question.
Yeah. Do you believe you saw
And
something?
he believes they
Right.
believe they saw
But
something.
that's not any different from what we already knew. I don't know. You didn't say anything. I don't know. The way you opened up that statement got me all hung up.
Because what we had said in the previous episode was, my aha moment was, oh, they all passed the polygraph examination because none of them killed Travis Walton. And that's what the questions were about. But there was at least
There was
one
one
series of
that
questions.
the sheriff asked them to throw in there just
Did
to
you
give
see?
some clout. Like, are you all full of crap with this UFO story? Like, why are you telling me this UFO story? He wanted
And they all
something.
passed
Yeah,
that. So
yes.
they all saw something.
Exactly.
So in my mind,
that's well understood.
I didn't.
Okay.
So in our previous episode, I thought that we were saying there were no questions about UFOs, that they were all about murder.
Oh, okay.
And so when we were saying these guys passed the polygraph, obviously it happened. We were saying they passed the polygraph because obviously they didn't kill Travis Walton.
Yeah.
Not that they were ever questioned about a UFO, but they were questioned about a UFO.
Questioned. But
Yeah.
the question is that like kind of magical wordsmithery, right? It's do you believe? And for only one of those people, according to the 2 verse 5 hoax idea, only one of them would have had to have been lying and passed, right? And even I think that even Mike didn't know what Travis was planning in terms of what their UFO was going to be. I think Mike knew a general, like where he needed to be and when and what to do and what role he had to play. And then the rest was orchestrated by Travis, and Mike was in the dark. And so it could be legitimate for him. Maybe. I don't know. That is hard for me because there is this. And we've all seen the way he acts. And I need to stop talking about this because forever and ever we can keep talking about this.
This Mike Rogers was the crew chief that these guys work for. He passed out 3 different times. They literally had to pick him up and get him back on his feet again.
Yeah.
That's, that's some pretty good acting if he was acting. So
He was pretty freaked out.
you got
Yeah.
me there. But anyway. All right, guys. So, woo! I have no idea what this is going to get edited down to.
Cameron does not believe.
Cameron does not believe.
JT, you still believe.
Yeah.
Abby, I'm guessing that you don't believe.
Don't believe. I think based on interview after interview, listening to Mike Rogers and seeing over and over again his weird tactics and styles of deception, I am totally convinced that he was a deceiver. Totally. I think he did a fantastic job on this in that case because it's really convincing.
I can't 100% let it go. I think it is compelling that there was no real UFO, that there was a hoax. But I don't know, man. Like, I think the part that really bothers me the most is Kenny Peterson. That man went to his grave with some serious trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And just
it ruined his life.
The notion that he suffered that his whole life and it wasn't even real breaks my heart because that's just not fair. It ruined him. And I just can't. Like, he believed he wasn't high.
No.
I know that Steve said that he blocked the view, but he couldn't have blocked the view of everybody. He saw something that upset him so much that he couldn't function as a normal man in a lot of ways after that. And that, I just can't let go of that. Yeah. Kenny Peterson, of all of them, maybe even John Goulet too, of all of them. I don't really know much about Dwayne Smith. seem like they were genuine and they weren't up to a bunch of bullshit,
No,
and they
and
didn't.
For the record,
There's-
I don't think they were either. I believe that if it was a hoax, it was definitely the 2 verse 5.
Yeah.
That these guys
So-
believe what they saw.
I don't know. But the fact that they all said they saw something shoot up out of the sky, they all experienced not just the visual stuff, but the sensory stuff, the vibrations and the sounds, and they
Yeah.
saw it wobble.
Mhm.
You know, all of that is compelling. You can gaslight people into a lot of things. I don't know that you could gaslight them into remembering sensory experiences like that didn't happen.
Mhm.
So something happened. I don't know what it was. If it was a hoax, it was extremely impressive and also a crime for what they
Mhm.
did to those men.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's where I'm at with it.
totally valid. All the stuff I found in MUFON regarding APRO was outraged to me, and I really wish I could talk about it more. But thank you so much, friggin' wanderers and listeners, for joining
You
us on this episode.
You should do a mini about it.
Maybe.
You should. You know it. Get it out there.
I was like, I should do a gossip side series because I
want to do my own side series that's totally separate from this.
like all about, but I want mine to be about paranormal stuff because when we were looking into cryptids, like I went down this weird, it was just like this, where there was a rabbit hole of all the weird, like people taking each other to court over like rights to Bigfoot junk. I was like,
Yeah.
what is happening?
That's what humans do. They cloud the shit and they make it about their egos and
Yeah,
what
they
they
do.
own or don't own, and it
Yep.
fuck it up, honestly.
Yep.
So anyway, you were trying to end the episode.
Yes, thank you so much, you guys. We're tired, and my mind was so blown that I really did not come in here very tightly following my own damn timeline or my own timeline shell. So I apologize, everyone. I was very excited.
It's all good.
Thanks for hanging in there.
I think there was some great conversation here.
Yes.
It is officially 27 hours since the last time I slept, guys.
Oh shit! Go to
Woo!
bed.
I did it.
All right. Well,
You just hit your second wind, it seems like.
Well, I'll probably fall asleep easy. And if I don't, I will take a THC gummy.
There you go.
yay. Well.
All right.
All right, wanderers and murderers, please join us next 2 weeks from now as we discuss the winter solstice. I think that's going to be a great one. Thank you so much for tuning in, hanging in there. Hope it was juicy and fun for you. Hope we confused the crap out of you or helped you to believe one thing or the other. And this has been another episode of
The Wandering Crow.